Peace Studies Institute at Spokane Community College presents authors Dr. Scott Finnie and Professor Angela Davis Wizner in a dialogue, Unlocking the Master Narrative. Our first episode, Living Black. Our panel today includes two celebrated African Americans sharing their experiences living black. Cedric Bradley comes to us from the inner city of Los Angeles, California. Raised in the 1980s in a crack cocaine environment, he experienced homelessness from a young age. This struggle to survive included a 10-year prison sentence. Upon his release, Cedric overcame this generational trauma to become a leader in his community, serving as the first criminal justice and public safety chairman for the Spokane NAACP. He currently is the director of Rising Strong, a program for families struggling to start over in life. His story sheds light on the many issues challenging the African American community today and the struggle to live black. Also on our panel today is Professor Angela Smith. A sought-after presenter, Angela has served as a trainer and human rights activist for over a decade. Angela couples her academic background in diversity and equity with her actual experiences living as an African American in a community with a 1.6 black population. Angela's challenges in her journey are unique and insightful. She brings this wealth of knowledge to Gonzaga University and Spokane Community College, where she serves as an adjunct professor of communication. Angela is also a collaborating partner with the Spokane Community College Peace Studies Institute and the Voices Unmuted broadcast series. Here now, Dr. Scott Finnie.
Well, we are here unlocking what we term as the master narrative today. And this means we're looking at the outside perception of the dominant culture. In light of that, Cedric, you are not a part of this narrative. When did you feel that you were different and different in a bad way?
In a bad way. What comes to my mind, the first thing is I was a kidnap victim as a young man in the 80s. And even though my kidnappers didn't mistreat me or harm me in no type of way, when law enforcement came into the home, automatically it was a divide. I was on the side of the kidnappers and didn't say a word. Now as I think about it, it horrifies me that I couldn't reach out for help, or that divide was created in a way that made me feel less than. So that was my first time.
Wow, yeah. Appreciate that. Angela, what about you?
Well, I think for me, being raised in Spokane, Washington, where there's this 9.4% Caucasian background and 1.5% African American, it's really shocking. I think the first incident that I really noticed that I was on the outside looking in was when I was 5 years old and I was going to kindergarten that year, and I remember going to school, and one of the kids made a comment and said, why doesn't your hair move when you walk? And that day I had my hair pulled over to the side and in a ponytail, and I thought about it and I'm like, why doesn't my hair move when I walk? I never thought about that, but it was like this sudden aha moment that I was like, why doesn't it? And I went home and I asked my mom, Mom, when I go to heaven, is my hair gonna move when I walk? It was so, I still remember that. I still remember that day when I asked her, will my hair move when I walk, Mom? And she said, yeah, it will. And from then on, I did everything that I could, no matter if it were to burn or damage my hair, whatever I could do to try to fit in with the dominant culture. Whereas to, relax my hair, to straighten it, to do everything I could and not even get braids, really, because I wanted to fit in with more of the dominant culture. And I wanted to, not be on the outside looking in, but in. And so I almost strive to be okay, one day when I go to heaven, I'll be able to be a part, And I think that was such an aha moment. I went from a carefree child to a black kid that was cautious at that moment.
Appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that. Angela?
That's a great start, Angela. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and give us an incident, an actual incident, where your traits of blackness left you on the outside looking in?
Yeah, so I mean, that was that first moment, right, where I had that aha moment. But I think as far as the outside looking in, from then on, I really felt like, so not only did I not see people of color in the classroom, like the children and kids, but not seeing it, you look on the walls, you look in the textbooks, you look at what you're learning, and everything is a part of that dominant culture. I remember even as a child, I didn't see dolls that I can identify with, right? So I look at this and I'm like, all these dolls have long hair and, have this skin tone color, and I was like, okay, where am I? Like I don't see it in the dentist, I don't see it at the doctor's office, I don't see it in the teachers, I don't see it in any type of leadership position. I don't see me. Where am I? And then I walk in the halls, I look in, books, textbooks, storybooks, and it's better today. But that was from then, at that point, I knew, okay, like I just have to be a part of this in order to be heard, right? So I really felt like I was on the outside looking in, and that it started with that moment. As a 5-year-old, I knew, okay, I'm different, but what do I do with that so that I can be heard, so that I can do something? And it's pretty can be pretty traumatic. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great story, Angela, because
Yeah.
it just reminds us of the feel that we get when we're on the outside looking in. That's just powerful. Cedric, I want to ask both of you this next question, but let's start with Cedric. Since this podcast focuses on history and communication, can you both share critical incidences of violation of basic communication that people have sent to you? Where did you hit that brick wall, so to speak, that left you in anguish and frustration because your communication just could not get through? And again, because this is communication, let's look at the actual utterances and communication messages that are sent. What do you think, Cedric?
For me, I'm still climbing the wall. I bumped my knee up against it, I'm scratching it, still climb over that wall. But for me, even in the director's position, being able to give some direction to my staff and still have them question me to the point to where I have to bring a VP or the CEO in to get my message across.
How did they question you?
And so, he must not be telling the truth. I don't know if he's telling the truth. The way he talks, the way he carries himself. So to me, it was disrespectful. But
Dishonesty automatically.
automatically. So just looking at me as being the other. So he must not
He's
be
the
right.
other.
Right. And so I could bring, my supervisor in the same exact message, and everybody's in there and paying attention. So it still happens, and it's difficult to deal with, but we just keep moving forward. So.
And the sender is questioned all the time.
All the time.
Has there ever been any utterances, communication messages sent to your face?
Plenty.
Give us an example of one.
I had an employee downright quit. And when they couldn't find themselves, they couldn't come to terms with taking any direction from a black man.
And did they say that to you?
Straight to my face.
So what utterance did they actually say? If that's not too painful to
No,
share.
it's painful. It's okay. I'm Ford truck built, right? So I'm ready. So just basically the conversation went, you seem like a nice guy, but I don't think you know what you're doing. I don't feel that I should be listening to you in this position. And quit.
And quit.
And quit. Yeah.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. And when that did happen, if I can interject, Cedric, what did you, first of all, feel, and then outwardly, though, what did you communicate? Because a lot of times there's a double tension going on.
Oh, yeah.
How did you handle that?
So one, I always felt like I didn't fit in. So I'm working extra hard, even though I feel that I'm a good worker, hard, honest man. And so when she said it, it stunned me. But it also reminded me of all the other instances to where you're the other, you're the hyphenated American. You're not just this one. So to me, and my response was like, okay, well, hey, sign this here. Good luck with life. Call me if you need any references.
Okay. So you
And I just kind of took the high road.
Yeah.
Internally, I'm raging. In my mind, I'm raging. But you learn how to hold it in.
Right.
And so I go box, and I know when I'm getting in private, I'm raging, I'm throwing things and stuff, and then I'm right back into mode.
Yeah.
Everyday work. But it's difficult to continue to, bite your tongue, not being able to respond a certain type of way, and take so much disrespect, and always having to be that better person.
Yeah. What you said reminds me of Dr. Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois. He mentions a double consciousness for African Americans. And he said, on one hand, you're one person outwardly, and yet you're another person inwardly. And that sounds like your communication was one person, but inside, things were pulsating. And that's part of the wear and tear, even the emotional drama that we wanted to bring out today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you?
Those disconfirming microaggressions that you've experienced, has it affected your productivity in the workplace? Or could you see it affecting productivity in the workplace for others that have to go through disconfirming messages when they're in the workplace?
Yeah, I see people struggle all the time. I have tried to hire a mixture of folk to serve the population of people we serve. So it's some native staff, indigenous people that constantly hear the jokes, constantly, to the point to where they're not even vocal anymore. They just play in the background, doing their job and going home. And so just to be able to be a part of those conversations and to motivate people to speak up and to interject and tell people it's not okay for you to be joking about me while I'm present. So it is, it's big, it's huge.
Angela, let's hear from you. What about you're a communication professor, we're looking at communication interaction. What actual utterances have been spoken to you that have left a mark on you all these years later?
So as far as actual utterances, I would say the first one that I can think of, there's so many, like Cedric was saying. You can't really, you bury them. Like you don't really want to believe you heard what you heard. And you learn that you can't because you can't say anything. Or you really are taking a risk. So the first thing I can think of is probably in about 7th grade. I remember I had a friend that went to her house, and she said, you can be here when my dad's here, or when my dad's not here, because my dad doesn't like black people. And I just remember, the thing that's hard with that is that, someone say, well, everybody doesn't like some people. But the hard thing about that is when you say you don't like black people, I can't change that. Like I can't decide to say, okay, well tomorrow I'm gonna be someone else, or I don't get to change that. And not only that, I have it in you're talking when you say you don't like black people, you're talking about my parent, my dad, his parents, it's generational trauma at that point. It's not just me and it's you have now hurt it's just a string, right? And at 7th grade, you're sitting there like, okay, I can't help it. And so that's the first specific. I've been at 5 years old called the N-word and things like that from the beginning, more, there's others, but that's the one I think I remember very specifically, being where I was at in her house when she told me, my dad doesn't like black people. But as far as communication principles, one of the constant struggles I think is that I see that I face is the lack of understanding and empathy for what happens is people, if you don't have the lived experience, you're not an African American, can't put yourself in my shoes, right? So you can't feel with me. You can feel for me and have sympathy, but you really can't have that empathy. And this is where that frustration comes when sometimes there's this idea that like, okay, like I've like learned all these things and I'm suddenly so woke and I know what your struggle is. And the truth is you can't make up for lack of lived experience. Like I can go and like watch a movie or read a study or like read a book like that is very, that I can learn, right, about the African American struggle. But it doesn't end for me. I don't close the book and say, all right, move on. Like it's over now. Like when I read those things, like I feel it, not only do I feel it on a visceral level, I have to continue to live it till I die. And I have to think about my family that continues and the things that they have gone through. So it's not like I get to close the book, pause the movie. It's lived, and it doesn't end. And it's not like, oh, it's a theme, it's a BLM, you know, but Black Lives Matter. That's wonderful. That was a nice time. That was a woke year. But it's hard because it doesn't end for me. It doesn't end. It doesn't end for my family. I don't get to just say, all right, we can find a cure, like, you know, or we can move forward. But it's deep. It's deep, and it's that lived experience. You can't make up for lack of lived experience. So that is where I hit a wall. That is where I hit a wall right there. If I could think of where I hit the wall the most, it's right there.
So Angela, that sounds somewhat like what I am involved with a lot of my classes when I mention Black History Month. You can have a start date and an end date, and then you get back to legitimate history. Is that kind of how you're feeling? You can start it up and end it, but you have to keep living it?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so like it's kind of like a spare tire, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Black History Month, that's a spare tire. We
Yeah.
put it on, now time to move on. Like I don't get to move on. Like it doesn't, there is no move on. There is no, okay, we've done what we can do. Like it's over. Like we found some sort of solution. It's lived. So I don't get to, like when I see this story, like George Floyd, I can't even watch that. I mean, I feel like that's me. Like I feel like that's my brother. I know what my brother struggles with, you know, like, so I know it's nothing new to me. And it's been centuries. It's been, so it's powerful, you know, it's traumatic, really. And so I don't get to just like kind of learn about it and move forward. So yeah, it is. It's
Right.
like that Black History Month.
Sure.
February 28th, that's the last day. Okay, we can move forward, you know.
You should feel fine by the
Yeah,
end of February.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We understand, you know, both of you, by opening up your lived experiences, there's a lot of trauma and reliving of things that you a lot of times would rather not do. But that's part of this communication and history session that we're having. We're trying to bring to communication level the history that's going on within and without. You know, after looking, one more major question. After looking at both of your lived experiences as members of being outside of the dominant culture, I'd like to finish off with a major point made by Malcolm X, kind of a major thematic concept that he had. And I'd like to see if you could complete this sentence. He said this: instead of putting on Band-Aids to make changes in society, we need a systemic revolution. We need, how would you finish that sentence? So this is Malcolm, all right? Instead of Band-Aids, we must have a systemic revolution. We need, how would you complete that sentence, Cedric?
We need Allah, Jesus, Moses, and everybody. You know, we need something radical to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, our country does great off the backs of people of color. And so it's going to take that same energy to reverse the trend and
Yes.
at least invest in higher education,
Yes.
preschool, healthcare, all the way across the board, just affordable living.
Yeah.
It's going to take something gigantic like that to happen in order for you can put that period on that sentence.
So the gap of equity is so large, the chasm is so grand, there has to be energy
It has to be.
directed. Yeah, appreciate that, thank you. Yeah. What would you say, Angela? How would you complete that sentence? We need,
Well, we need to make the visible, or we need to make the invisible visible. So truly visible. We need to, be invited, like Cedric was saying, be invited to the table, and our voices need to be heard instead of muted. They've been muted for a long time. So it's time for the voices to be heard. And then I also believe that humanity, like going back to we need Jesus, right? Like we need humanity needs to acknowledge, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, that there comes a time when silence is betrayal. And our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about the things that matter.
Very good.
So we need to stop being quiet, being silent, and start having these discussions. And just like Cedric said, I mean, there's been, so much done off the backs of people of color, specifically Black people. And so it's time for them to now to have a voice.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Angela?
All right, concluding question. We're going to end on a positive note. Share with us some positive messages that you have received that help shape your success, because we are looking at two very successful people. Angela, tell us a message that you just hear in your mind helped you shape a positive self-esteem that you have today.
Well, definitely the one that I hear in my mind the most is my grandma, who I called Big Mom. She would always say, and it's my dad's mom, she would say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I always remember her saying that, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." She chose to not be bitter. So that has kept me positive. Also, a turning point for me is when I had a professor. The first time I had a Black teacher, a Black female teacher, was in college. First time, and I remember she was a communication teacher, and she had braids and she had awesome energy, and she told me, "Angela, you can do it. Like you can do it, and you will do it. So continue this work, continue what you're doing, and put your foot forward." And just to see her in that position was powerful, but also to say and to identify with her, but also that she had that utterance, like you said, like what was the utterance? And she said, "You can do this, and you will." It was very powerful.
Outstanding.
Power of communication.
Yeah.
Cedric, what stands out to you?
What stands out to me is a number of things, but this one specific instance. I was homeless, 4 kids, single, going to school, trying to fit in at Whitworth, sitting in the back of the class, and just trying to figure it out. And came across my mentor and great friend, and he spoke life into me. He gave me that motivation of, one, seeing somebody in a positive light on such a level. It's such calmness and happy. It was my first time actually seeing somebody not act happy. It was just like loves what he's doing. And he told me that I am making my ancestors proud. And to me at the time, I didn't get it. I'm living behind which we call Rising Strong now, the Holy Names Convent. I stayed behind there because I worked answering crisis calls all through the night for a youth facility. But then I got it. It made me understand that I got to work hard, and I may have to work harder than my peers in order to move forward. And every step of the way, I had this individual always instill in me that God has a plan. God has a plan for me, and I can't slow down. I got to walk towards it. And so, and with that, it fills me up with hope that society is going to see me one day as just not just this Black guy, but as an individual who has led the way, for his people. And it's important that I stay on that path, regardless of how difficult the times may be, regardless of how sick this illness called racism is in America. We still have to be that part of that cure in moving forward. And so, like the good doctor used to tell me, here's his book, read 2 of these and call me in the morning.
There you go. Very well put. I appreciate that, both of your sharings. At this point in closing, I'd like to introduce a special section that we'll have in each of our episodes. We call it the 1 Minute Spotlight. And Angela, who will you be highlighting today in our 1 Minute Spotlight?
Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was born a slave in 1862 in Mississippi. She was lauded for her journalistic activism, publishing incidents of horrific treatments of African Americans. But specifically, she led the way in a campaign against the lynching process and single-handedly initiated reforms that would eventually abolish many of the mistreatments that were meted out to African Americans at the time. Ida was tough, though. She showed her determination when she was on a train ride to Nashville in 1884. She was ordered to move to an area on the bus just for African Americans, but she held a first-class ticket, and she refused to move. She was forcibly removed from the car, but not until she bit the conductor on the way out. This was many of the incidents where Ida stepped into the center of the struggle, and she gave it her all. So we celebrate Ida B. Wells today as we explore the struggle living Black.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, in closing, I'd like to end with our session today with a quote from our beloved Dr. King. And I think we all, especially Cedric and Angela, you'll be able to embody this in your experience. Dr. King said this: "I came to the conclusion that there is an existential moment in your life when you must decide to speak for yourself. Nobody else can speak for you." Thank you for joining us today. Take care.